What was it that you saw that people needed to get help with, not procrastinate?
It does seem to be that procrastination is like a general thing that a lot of people relate to it in some way or another. It might be they have bad habits in place, or maybe they're doing certain things that they know they shouldn't be doing that's holding them back from doing something they want to do, or maybe it's social anxiety, or maybe it's intrusive thoughts, or maybe it's self-limiting beliefs. So that covers a lot of ground. Procrastination. Beginning, it was to do with anything. Like people would be relating to that in all sorts of ways. It could be with their business, it could be with work, it could be with their personal life, it could be with their relationships, it could be with anything, right? So this brings in a broad pool of people, you can say, because people have all sorts of different backgrounds. Like I'm not just going to stick with one specific idea and just hammer on with that and try and get results from it. So I was like, okay, I'll try and merge all the practices and the exercises that I found in cognitive behavioral therapy with dialectical therapy, Jungian psychology, with philosophy as well as being the main thing, the Socratic process or Socratic questioning, which I think is basically the foundation of most exercises or processes of CBT, following through with the principle that you are to act as a mirror to others in a way that is only bring about goodwill for that person, so that they are the person that are finding kind of revelation for themselves rather than you telling them what to do.
The starting point is procrastination, because that is what most people struggle with, and that is so true. And coaching is most of the time aiming at the next thing that will drive you to your goals. That can be very materialistic, or it can be within yourself internally, or, holistically. But when you say procrastination, people know what it's about, but they first want to get rid of their procrastination and their patterns. And when they go along with the process with you, they notice how much that implied and how much insights to where their procrastination come from. And that's the key point when you say that let themselves realize things, because you can tell anyone that, okay, I can solve your problem. I just do this, that. Some people that will work for, but in my experience, it's not working that well. And you're stealing their adventure as well when you do that. Because they need all the reflections, all the struggles to get to that realization, to the next step.
The main problem that people are suffering with, why they would go to someone like a therapist or a coach, is because they are not accountable with someone else with regards to their vulnerabilities. And if they have that, then, and they trust that connection to be open about their vulnerability, maybe their insecurities in some regard, then that accountability that's built will allow them or help them get to the next step of what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to realize about themselves. Well, they don't have anyone else to really talk to with regards to what they feel insecure about. So difficult things, a vulnerable thing to do, because there isn't maybe that trust with someone else, or maybe it's difficult to build that trust with someone else.
Hello, I'm your host, Matthias Lidborn, and this is the Metanoia Path Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Metanoia Path Podcast with me, your host, Matthias Lidborn. For today's episode 4, we will be joined by Spencer from the Thoughts on Thinking YouTube channel. Spencer is a content creator and a YouTuber that dwell deep into topics like philosophy, psychology, and religion. Spencer is also a coach, more precisely a procrastination coach. So if you know that you're prone to procrastinate things and delay things that you should do, this is a perfect episode for you. So enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Metanoia Path Podcast with me, your host, Matthias Lidborn. And today I'm joined by Spencer from Ireland. And he's a coach, a procrastination coach. And I have been following your work for, what can it be, 2 years, I think. And you and I have a quite similar take on things. we have a similar interest and views on things. And what stuck out to me was your posts on Instagram, actually. It was where I found you. And usually I don't read posts, Instagram posts. It doesn't grab my attention. But your posts were, they really caught my attention. And I actually read your posts. And it was always this, when I read your posts, it was oftentimes that it was similar thoughts and similar concepts and thoughts, and that you shared that I at the moment were thinking about and reflecting on. So it was always this almost synchronistic in a Jungian term, momentarily when you're posting, I was thinking about this, and your post was really good. Just with this quite simple but very beautiful pictures, and you had this like picture that followed on the next picture. The picture followed, and there was some text there. So I really found that to be really great, and you have a certain way to just in writing. Get the point straight up. So I actually haven't watched that many videos of your YouTube channel, because you have this great channel, Thoughts on Thinking, as you can see here in the screen as well. And I've watched some of it, but not too much. Most of the Instagram text, actually. So, but all the videos I have watched is really great, and your short content on spot. So you seem very knowledgeable, and to have had read a lot of Jung and Nietzsche, and I won't go. I will let you talk. That's what I'm trying to say. So, just a short introduction. Where are you from, and what's your background, and so forth? And do you have any background in academia?
Yeah. So, I don't have any kind of like qualified background in academia or anything like that. When I was, I guess, in terms of like where I grew up in the UK, in England, and then I was, I think, around 17 or 16, I moved with my parents to Ireland because I bought a house over there. And that was more when I started looking into all of this kind of content around spirituality and literature, classical literature and stuff like this. And theology.
Sorry, Spencer. How old were you at that time?
Around about like 18. So I moved over there, and then I was trying to kind of like figure out how to integrate myself into the country, because I moved out of the UK when I was around 16. So at the time I was really into music, and so I focused a lot on that for a while, and then I kind of got a bit sick of it in a way, because I was like, they're like a different kind of calling towards something else that is different or encompasses different kind of interests. And that's when I kind of looked into more of things to do with psychology, philosophy, and Jordan Peterson was like a massive kind of introduction into that when I was like 18, I think. So that was kind of where I started off a little bit.
And how old are you now?
I'm 25 now. So
25.
Okay, quite a while now. But yeah. So and there's been a lot that's happened, I guess, in between that time. And that, basically, this is quite interesting when you look at kind of like the Jordan Peterson phenomenon when he like came about and he was getting really popular, because there was a lot of people, he just blew up online, and then I guess a lot of young men were kind of like reading his books, and then it kind of led a kind of gateway, like a flood gateway to a lot of different kind of content that he kind of focuses on, like Carl Jung or psychoanalysis or kind of mythology in different ways and stuff like this. And that's kind of where I kind of got that influence in a way. I started looking into a lot of this type of stuff. And then what I was doing, so I guess like in terms of the YouTube channel and all this type of thing, I was about, I think I was around the same age, about 19 or 20 when I started just uploading stuff. So I was studying at home. I was trying to continue on my English kind of education in Ireland at the time because I was trying to apply into all of these Irish schools, and they were kind of like rejecting me. So I didn't have these kind of like Irish certificates to get into the next kind of school system curriculum. So I continued my English education. I did it at home. So I kind of like self-taught these A-levels, what they're called A-levels in the UK. And that was when I kind of started doing a YouTube channel as well, because I was like, how can I complement what I'm learning and kind of revise that content in the same way to the point where it's beneficial for me, and while also kind of developing something outside of it. So I was like, I'll make YouTube videos and then I'll kind of study at the same time. And I was studying my philosophy, psychology, and sociology. So I was kind of doing that in that process. And that's when things started to pick up, and I was kind of, a couple of videos were getting popular on like Nietzsche or on Carl Jung or some of these, big philosophers. And then that was quite surprising. So I wasn't really expecting that. And then it kind of just evolved from that and, evolved into now, which is like a kind of like a coaching consultation service, which you do, but it's not like the main thing I do at the moment, but I still do that now and again. But, it's been very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Spencer. You're a very young guy, but you seems to be an old soul.
Yeah, I really told this.
Yeah, and actually, that was when I was at your age. I get the same response, but you're on a different level. You're really. It seems that you can really grasp and connect things quite nicely.
I appreciate that.
And you was born in UK and now you're in Ireland. Would you say, because I was actually spontaneously at the moment thinking about Ireland. It's so rich of these mythologies and folklores, So have you had a time to delve deep into that or something? I mean, you're in that environment and you have these interests, so it might be, if there's like rural areas with ruins and so forth. Just a quick note on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's more of like an embodied experience because I moved very young, and my parents got this very remote house, very quite far away from most things. Really, it's very rural. So you really, as soon as you kind of go into that environment, you're very much surrounded by the history of the land and the stories. I mean, even the local area has so much stories. And there was like, kind of like caves on the other side of this mountain. That was where the house was residing. If you go to the other side of that mountain, which is not a mountain, it's like a very large hill. But if you go to the other side, there was these very deep caves, and those caves very historical in that area. And there's like ruins and kind of all sorts of things in that area, burial grounds, very ancient burial grounds. So it's like there's like, you could say, I wasn't at the time very intellectual with it. I wasn't reading into the mythologies, the written pieces, but more kind of surrounded by it. So when I first kind of got there, I was very much kind of integrated with that in a sense. And that very much influenced kind of my writing process with like music at the time when I was really first moved there. And then it probably also influenced my temperament as a person as well, because I'm quite introverted, more so than like extroverted or anything like this. So it's definitely been very influential on me, that big process when I was younger, making that.
Okay, I see. Okay, so I don't know if you follow. This is a little sidestep here, but do you follow Jonathan Pageau's work?
Yeah, I bought his brother's book a long time ago. I think it's up on the shelf there.
Yeah. Good eye. Yes, correctly. Somewhere here. So yeah. The reason why I ask is because I saw they recently started this universal history about Ireland. So might interest you.
Didn't know that.
So, yeah. Anyway, so I have a question for you about your coming to discover Jung among other philosophers and psychoanalysis. So if you have read Freud or something like that, and this is just my intuition that you have a, like myself, very Jungian perspective of things, and he's like one of the most this is like one of those days that my tongue just gets not so good with English. Yeah, you know what I mean. Had the most impact on you.
Yeah.
So is that correct? And if that's correct, why is he, regarding from your perspective, the most go-to guy, so to say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say when I was reading, when I was kind of delving into psychology, or well, it was more like psychoanalysis when I was reading Freud and these kind of characters. I found them interesting, and they were, coming from like a perspective where they were talking about, how the psyche works, and you look into, like Sigmund Freud's most kind of influential concept of the super ego, the id, and the ego, and that the mind or the psyche is kind of built up of these three constructions and all of this. But at the same time, he was kind of like affirming that there was no supernatural existence of God, and that this isn't relevant, and that this is just a fabrication of the mind. And I thought it was quite dismissive of something that's very relevant for humanity in general. Like, we've always believed in something that is unseen. And I thought his response was very just blunt and dismissive, and not it wasn't very careful in the sense of trying to analyze or trying to understand this kind of stuff. But then you have Carl Jung, who was more looking into spirituality. What does it mean to be spiritual? And then he was looked into like the Platonic forms, which is kind of very early on classical philosophy, which is to identify that there are forms that are kind of existent throughout, you could say, the world, or through history, or through existence, that are constantly replicated in different ways through different interpretations from different civilizations, which would be like the Platonic forms or something like this. And he interpreted that as being archetypes. And I found that very interesting. Especially when he applied that there are archetypes to the psyche, where he has the idea of the ego, where he has the shadow, the unconscious, the collective unconscious, and that the idea that myth or mythology is very much a very important aspect of the psyche to try and describe these forces that are at play, because mythology is basically consistent throughout all civilizations. And that is very relevant because it's a consistent thing that comes up all the time. So why does that exist? Why is that there? We'll be trying to describe that there are certain energies or certain forces that are at play. And is that what's going on there? And I was like, well, that's very interesting. That's a relevant thing to talk about, you know? So kind of Freud and like psychoanalysis kind of avoids all of that. And it's more reductionist in a way. I wouldn't say completely, but it is in its own particular way, when it kind of rejects any kind of spiritual ideas as just being mere illusions of the mind and all of this. So that's kind of what gravitated me towards Jung, I would say. And I think his approach with psychology is a lot more holistic in that way as well, where he's not denying particular things as such, but he's trying to understand why they are there, or why people think of certain things. Why do we read into patterns that are existent in life? Why do we create symbols? Why do these things happen? Instead of just being very reductionistic or about these certain phenomena. So I find that being kind of what gravitated me towards more of Carl Jung. There's more honest, or maybe more sincere, maybe more humble in the approach of these things, rather than being very reactive towards like the spiritual world or something like this.
Yeah. I totally agree there with the view on him. He's a very humble guy, and a great guide, to hold, to have holding one's hand through different questions in life, the existential questions. And with Freud there, for myself, I haven't read that much of Freud. He never interested me, actually.
Right.
And then one time I met this 90-year-old, really vital gentleman. He turns out we started talking. He explained to me that that he worked with in his working years. He was a psychologist, and we started talking. He was surprised that I understand some things he was talking about. He was a deliberate reader of Jung as well. And so he asked me if I had read Freud, and I said no. He said straight up, "Don't bother. It's crap." So I don't think that is correct, but totally correct. I don't think so, even though I haven't read him so much. But he have a lot of ideas that is really compelling, and I think is true. But yeah, he didn't like it, and he said, if you're going to read something of Freud, read his cocaine papers. Okay. Yeah, I looked it up afterwards because I never heard about it. It was some paper. I haven't read it, so I just looked it up. It was about Freud, yeah, being an addict or something. But you can look.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, yeah, I've never heard of that, but yeah, I would say like the Freud's work is still quite relevant, but I think it limits itself to a degree.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think people who are in that field maybe have a tendency to become a bit too obsessed with his work or his interpretations and kind of deify the man when he's just a man. So
Same with Jung, right?
yeah, definitely.
Especially with Jung, and Jung also said it. He thank God I'm Jung and not a Jungian. This said something that he really, because Jung was like some sort of a prophet, in my mind. And he knew that it will, and of course, I think he saw it in his lifetime that there was becoming this cult around him, and he didn't like it, I think.
Yeah.
But but Jung is very humble, and he. What I appreciate with it, as you said as well, he's exploring things. He's open to things. You don't dismiss things.
Yeah.
But he wanted to be perceived as a scientist as well. So sometimes you can see when in his writings that is, I'm just talking through empirical evidence and so forth. But then, if you read his older work, he's more open. So a little bit a different Jung in the later works.
Yes, you can see kind of more like the you could say how someone kind of evolves themselves, or how they evolve over time. Like if he's more kind of scrutinous with his earlier work, and then later on he's more, you could say like he's psychedelic. He's going into a lot of stuff that's very controversial to someone who isn't into that at all, like his Red books, for example.
Yeah, have you read it?
I've read parts of it. Have you read it? Or
Yeah, I have read the whole thing actually.
is it more like kind of, it's like a journal entry that's very imaginative, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And after I read it, I thought it was one of the most exciting books I've ever read actually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. There's so much going on in that.
yeah, exactly. But that was before I read the Bible, so so that it's worth reading. But at the same time, it's a very intimate thing to read, because Jung didn't publish it himself, and it's like personal, but at the same time you can see that he somehow knew that it will be public in some way.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but you have the black books as well, and that the black books is what the red book is based on. Just it's edited and in a more readable sense. I think I haven't read the black book, so I don't know. But yeah, and I wonder also how at some point I am noticed in your posts and in your videos that you was your content became more Christian. And that was also something that caught my attention, because at the same time, of course, I was on the same path, let's say. And then I wondered, okay, what kind of Christianity is he interested in? And it seems to be, as myself, Orthodox Christianity. And you can flesh that out and speak a little about how you, was it through Jung that you
I think yeah, it was I think over a process of time with looking into esoteric material, like occultism, if you want it to refer it to that with it as a term. Like after looking into all of that, and I kind of got a bit sick of it, in the sense that that most of the time all of that material is very individualistic, in the sense of it being about individualism, overcoming oneself, and there being this kind of aspect to it that I noticed. So that was one thing I noticed quite a lot, and I found that unsatisfactory for me because I was like, I'm looking, I'm looking through all this different literature. Like I was reading a lot of like Manly P. Hall, who was doing a lot of, at the time, a while ago, he was doing a lot of research into the esoteric teachings.
Can you repeat that name?
Manly P. Hall. He was,
I never heard of it.
he was yeah, I think he was mostly just a man who's doing a lot of research into kind of ancient religions and all kind of esoteric kind of traditions and stuff like this. And I was kind of reading a lot of material similar to that and trying to understand, what is the truth? Where's this all going? Like, what is something that can be like a shared objective truth, either with morality or with like ethics or in terms of virtue? Like, what is something that I can like grasp onto here? And the more I was reading into the occult, the more I was kind of disheartened by it, because I was like, well, there is nothing here that is really pertaining to a shared morality. It's all very subjective. It's relativistic in a way, where it's like you make up your own rules, you do what you want to do. Again, individualism coming up a lot. Striving for your own will, all of this type of thing. And I was like, okay, if that's the case, with a lot of this material, I was like, well, then it leans more towards kind of subjective morality. And I don't really like that, because it's like, if I'm looking for what the truth is, in some sort of sense, I'm willing to try and find something that's objectively true, at least for me anyway. And then I kind of think to myself, well, if something's subjectively moral, or if we're pertaining to that idea, then what you believe is true to you and what I believe is true to me, and therefore there is no shared compatibility with that. Therefore, it's kind of just meaningless. And
It's subjective.
yeah, and it kind of unravels to this kind of like relativism to me. And then that's why I just think, okay, like, it's kind of nihilistic, you know. How can I? So I just kind of like think how, and then I just think to myself with regards to Christianity, like, what do I really disagree with Christianity? What do I disagree with regards to Jesus Christ, teachings of Christ? And then like I don't just
Great.
time on out.
Sorry, but that's there's some delay, so sometimes we clash when we talk. But we just no problem. But that's a great starting point to point out what you don't like about the worldview you're approaching. So it's a great starting point, I think. So yeah, please continue.
Yeah, so I think a good phrase is that kind of represents this is like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I feel like the occult kind of represents everything. It's very inclusive. Therefore, it doesn't really stand for anything in particular. Like, it doesn't collectively stand for a certain thing itself that brings about a communal goal that people can drive towards, that's for the betterment of people as a whole, let's say. That because something that you can very much find in Abrahamic religions. You find that in Christianity, that this stands for like selfless love, basically, which is, I would say, the main tenet of what it is. And I just kind of got very sick of that. I was just like, I can't put my faith into any of these things. Because then the question of what does it mean to have faith or belief came up for me quite a bit. And I go, where can I put my faith? What can I believe in it? Because I don't really believe that man can save himself. I don't really think that's something that's possible. So I was like, again, the occult kind of shrouds itself around this idea of, being your own savior, being able to, it's very Promethean, and that is just not something I agree with. I don't think that is really something we can achieve. Exactly. We have to have something that we kind of believe in that influences our actions towards something that's higher than ourselves.
Yeah. And when you say the occult, did you when you were when you were exploring the occult, were you prone to look at a certain form of occultism, or maybe a esoteric branch of a certain a myth, or like the pantheons of the pagan gods of the Germanic tribes or something like that? Or was it more like a Wiccan, or where did you explore most?
I'd say it was more maybe 19th century kind of New Age kind of invention. Like, I wouldn't say I was delving into any of this stuff, but what was kind of representative of the occult now, which would be kind of New Age movements, kind of like this kind of Aleister Crowley attitude to life, this kind of thing, and whatever that he kind of uses to kind of represent these kind of ambitions with the individual will or will to power, this kind of stuff, but also like just the act of trying to understand what is true. Like, Manly P. Hall's kind of a good example, because he would look into antiquity, and he's kind of a syncretist in the sense that he would probably believe that all of these religions represent a form of truth, and therefore he doesn't commit to one or the other, or put his faith into one or the other. Like, that type of individual. And I think even Aldous Huxley kind of wrote a book about this kind of stuff. But kind of that attitude, or those kind of movements that were more kind of 20th, 21st century, 19th century, Madame Blavatsky kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
Theosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rudolf Steiner as well, maybe.
Yeah, but I'd still, yeah, he's kind of interesting as well. But yeah, I'd probably put him in there as well.
Yeah. It's kind of like New Age Christianity with Rudolf.
Yes. It's kind of it's Christianity without the commitment or something, or that's what, at least I think, is the movement that's called syncretism. I think it's called syncretism, where they see truth in all major religions but don't commit to any of them, but say they're all true.
And that, like perennialism.
Well, yeah,
kind of like perennialism with René and so forth. Yes, and that every religion and every path leads to God.
Yeah, yeah. This kind of is, even though to believe that is to basically be a heretic to all those religions. Oh yeah, it's you're right. So they're like, oh yeah, none of them. They all want you to be committed to one of them at least. This is about it.
Yeah, great wording there. I never heard that. Yeah, but that's completely true. I think you're heretic to every religion. Then, yeah. So
like a New Age belief or something.
But it's it got a lot of complexity when you're approaching your religion and traditions, especially when you're coming from a secular age, born in a secular age, and when you don't have any parents that it's emerged in a tradition when you grow up. So we have been disconnected. So it's a hard topic, and you can dismiss all religions only because you hold to the Christian story, because there is, I don't know if you're familiar with not the doctrine, but logos spermaticos, that you have seeds in different times and different religions. That is the seed from logos, from Christ.
Is that a Is that like an Orthodox?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. All right.
yeah. And that really harmonized my view of things. It's same with Jung. When you approach him, that you have. I can imagine you had the same experience. I don't know if you didn't. You can just get a heads up, but that you had all these thoughts and all these experiences and all these realizations and your reflections and so forth. But when you read Jung, he connecting the dots and a lot of it. And Orthodox Christianity, for me, at least, did that to a larger degree, to a not comparable, because it's like a whole new worldview. And in the beginning, it can be this. You can notice yourself in your own will. It's not like reading like esotericism and so forth, because you have the option to just pick and choose.
Yeah.
But with Christianity, no, this is how it is, and if you don't like it, yeah, you have to repent and try to reconcile it in some way. Yeah, but in some ways, it's quite close to what I found in Jung as well. When you break it down, the most important thing is to be suspicious of yourself and try to see where your faults is, and to be a better person. If you just break it down in a very simple way, and it's almost like in Christendom, try to become a saint, saint-like or Christ-like. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just to kind of put my point across with the whole denomination stuff. At the moment, I'm not really like either or with any of these denominations. Like, I'd find but it's had to pick one that I kind of resonate more with is like, I would say the Orthodoxy, or like the Orthodox kind of denomination does kind of charm more at my kind of personal interest. For some reason, I don't really know why, like specifically. I don't really know loads about the Orthodox tradition as such, except for a few things. But like, I would gravitate more towards that if I had to be of one. But it is interesting. Like, you look at, I think it's the St. Paul's letters to Corinth and Corinthians, I think, and he talks about divisions within the church, and that at that time there were kind of these individuals that were kind of masquerading as kind of like as the kind of false idols, or these kind of individuals that were trying to represent themselves as leaders of the church rather than submitting themselves to Christ within the church. And therefore there being divisions within the church as certain people kind of choosing which ones they would want to follow. And it's kind of interesting if you go back to those letters to Corinth, because this was the area that was happening at the time. And I think of that with regards to denominationalism, because in a way, denominations, as much as they can age towards like the tendencies of that person with regards to like there being like a gravitational pull, there being like this kind of interest, I do think at the same time there is this division at the end of the day. Like there is this schism of like the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. And I think it's interesting that those early letters to Corinth by St. Paul, I think it's St. Paul. If I'm wrong, but I think it's St. Paul that he's talking about these divisions, and that being kind of, at least in my opinion, that resembling this denominational conflict that does kind of move away from the ultimate message of Christ in a way. So I find it's very interesting. But at the same time, I'm very much embracing of all of these denominations. I'd be more, you could say, not really picking one myself in terms of faith or anything like this, but at the same time, embracing of all of them as they can be kind of ways to understand how people understand Christianity, because they're kind of a resemblance of, you could even apply like a Jungian take to it, like they're kind of a resemblance of people's personalities and how they relate to, something spiritual. Denominations has it, there's these different interpretations, like how Protestants would be more about faith through salvation through faith, and then Catholics being including the idea of having to do good works and faith and all this type of stuff. It's very interesting. But yeah, I would say there are probably like denominations that are completely incorrect, like Mormonism, and things like that. So they completely deviate from these kind of fundamental teachings as well. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying there, and yeah. So it would be like, of course, if Christianity comes to, let's say, Chile, and Christianity comes to Tanzania, there's quite different approaches to it, but that is, in some ways, you get that also with the Orthodox Christianity. The different flavors, different atmospheres. But what is the difference there is that even if you're like a Russian Orthodox or Serbian Orthodox, okay, those two is not a good example because they're quite close Slavic people, but like a Russian Orthodox or a Greek Orthodox, let's say, you will have this different flavor to it, but the doctrines and everything and the liturgy is the same. Then you have the Orientals. There is, of course, more differences. Yeah, I have been thinking in those ways as well, but I think Brack's text is what tradition holds to have most continuity with the Old Testament.
Yeah,
there is. I think that is where I know that is how I approach it anyway.
Yeah, it's difficult as well because I would see it as that as well, and then I try to think of the problem of Christians being in conflict with each other over this kind of stuff is it's quite there's a lot of that. There's a lot of these Christians being against other Christians because they have a different denominational opinion.
A lot of polemics.
Yeah. So I see that as the problem, and then what's the solution to that? And then you have like Protestantism coming from that, trying to create a solution, which wasn't really a solution. So so it's very tricky to kind of navigate that. But I think like a shared compassion and like a kind of an understanding of what denominations are to represent in different ways is like necessary for these different types of people from these different backgrounds to kind of more have a shared understanding between each other rather than people just purely just having this kind of conflict. Because you could also see like from a psychological view that a denomination is like a group, and therefore there's group psychology within that denomination. And then that group psychology, or the way that's going to behave, can lead people away from Christianity. So it's like it can be very ego driven. So you could have like the Protestant Revolution being, or Protestant Reformation being very driven in certain ways that are not in alignment to Christianity. So there are these tricky situations that come with that.
Yeah. And there is some interesting things with the different dominations as well. If you would hold to that there is only one correct, let's say, doctrine and form of Christendom, you would still have to see that the different dominations is a part of the story. I heard this I got from Pajot, actually. He talked about Peter as the first pope, and that is some form of, I can't go deep into it, but just on a surface level, it's like, you can see all this liberalization of the Catholic Church, and have deviated from the faith quite extremely in some cases, with the clown masses and all of that. And just one thing that I thought was very interesting, he talked about, that I didn't know actually, is that, Peter, he was, because he was so humble, he didn't want to get staked on the cross like his Lord, like Jesus Christ. So they hang him upside down, and just that started me to think, okay, so it's in some way, the different dominations is like part of this story. I don't know if that lands on, but if you know what I mean,
As in, like, yeah, because each apostle basically gets, they all get crucified in some sort of sense. They all get the same treatment that Christ gets, but in a different way, and that maybe each apostle, or each form of apostles' commitment to the faith is kind of a representation of a different denomination, and that denomination being like a different expression of that's even like a good way of kind of looking at the Gospels as well, because the Gospels are, they're 4 different, you could say, interpretations of the truth with regards to what happened to Jesus Christ, because they're eyewitness testimony, and they're going to be different in their own interpretation, in their own translation, because they're coming from the eyes of 4 different individuals, right? But doesn't mean that it's not all, it still means that it's true, in the same sense that the core message of these different denominations is still true. And they're still trying to reach towards the fundamental message of, Christ being, well, I think a true denomination, I'd say, like, is one that maintains a faith in the 3 principles of kind of a belief in Jesus, which would be that Jesus is the Son of God, that Jesus was crucified and then resurrected on the 3rd day. Like, as long as they all maintain on that fundamental, those 3 fundamental principles, then I'd be like, yeah, they all are trying to guide themselves towards this fundamental truth with Christianity. But there's some that don't do that. There's some that completely disagree with that. I think Mormonism is one example.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't really, that's more of a form of,
or Adventists as well, being another one, I think. So yeah, that's more very tricky to look at.
It's the word. I dropped the word. When you have different gods.
Different gods.
Yeah, when you have different God in a pantheon, what is called not yeah, thank you. The Mormonism is like that, so it doesn't really fit to the Christian category, as you said. So and yeah, but yeah, it's it's something that takes time. For some people, it just clicks, and for some people, you really need to combat it, and you really need to wrestle with it. And as Jordan Peterson says, wrestle with God, or Israel is what that it means. I think wrestle with God, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that, but yeah, I mean,
But
it's yeah, maybe even the process of wrestling with God is the most important thing, because that is what brings you to more of an understanding of what you're dealing with, rather than like maybe not wrestling with God is the problem, and just submit to something kind of blindly without critique or doubt is maybe a problem that, you have to constantly try and battle with these things actively, I think, so it should try and get closer to the truth.
yeah, I can say for myself, I have combated it really, really hard. I am really critic, and I'm like this. I go in like, I don't know, 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional chess against myself. If I want something to be true, I don't uh, just hold it. I don't take it. I start to think from the other extreme. Okay, what is wrong with this position that I would love to hold to, but I see faults in it. So I have to explore it. I have to combat it. I have to unravel it and see what's behind all these doctrines and so forth. And of course, at some point, you can't continue that because that's too much. You have to have the experience as well in the sacraments and so forth. And that's one thing I think is really important as well when you approach is it's about your it's about your soul and how to save your soul, and how to get the medicine that the church can provide you to cleanse, to correct your passions, so to say. And the priests, they are phenomenal psychotherapists, especially in the Orthodox tradition. They're so used to people, and they have this humility, and yeah. But know that's something that has to be experienced, and it's a slow process. It's not like when you're reading all these fantastic text of esotericism and occultism and so forth. There is always this excitement, but in when I don't know if you have the similar experience, but it's more, it's gentle. It's a calm flow. You get some bread crumbles at the time, when it's appropriate to get them, so you have the time to integrate the things you come upon. But it's great perspective there. Something to think about what you said. And something I also wanted to pick your thoughts or your on your coaching business. It was very it was quite similar to my own coaching business, and how I pursue it. through a Jungian perspective, how to reconcile the coaching with Jungian perspective without, because I'm very careful to not paint myself as, some kind of pseudo psychoanalysis, because that is far away from it, for me at least, because I don't have a degree in it, and I'm absolutely not that well read in it, and not that because it to be a Jungian analyst, it takes a lot of time, and you have to have a really, really good, really high intellect, and you have to have a lot of money. So because it's very expensive if you want to go to Zurich, and it's minimum 6 years. But you can be in minimum 6 years. But many people that is studying in Zurich and so forth, they can be there for like 10 years. So it's very
interesting.
It's very it's how to say it. It's very it's like changing your whole life, so to say, to become a Jungian analyst. So I'm very careful to not try to make it up that I'm something like that, and that's what I see. You have that balance. You have really created this merge with Jung, and also Christianity now in the later, like in the last year or something, right?
Yeah, I'd say actively like last year, because I do introduce it now to coach quite a bit. Yeah.
And with this procrastination, I can't pronounce that word.
Procrastination. Yeah.
Yeah, procrastination. In Swedish is okay, but in English you just get stuck, But anyway, and how did you come to that? What was it that you saw that people needed to get help with, not procrastinate?
Yeah, so I saw it as this a very common theme with people that would be watching the content on YouTube. So if I was talking about psychological concept, let's say, or I was talking about just individuation as a concept, and it does seem to be that procrastination is like a general thing that most people relate to. A lot of people know the word, they know what it means, and two, a lot of people relate to it in some way or another. In whatever way that might be they are procrastinating because they have bad habits in place, or maybe they're doing certain things that they know they shouldn't be doing that are bad habits that's holding them back from doing something they want to do, or maybe it's pressure anxiety, or maybe it's intrusive thoughts, or maybe it's self-limiting beliefs. So that covers a lot of ground with procrastination. So I was like, okay, I'll call the coaching like something to do with procrastination, like procrastination coaching, anti-procrastination, procrastination coaching. And then I just had that available and people coming through. And at the beginning, it was to do with anything. Like people would be relating to that in all sorts of ways. It could be with their business, it could be with work, it could be with their personal life, it could be with their relationships, it could be with anything, right? So I was like, oh, that's good. It brings in a broad kind of a pool of people, you could say. And then, so I was kind of working from that. And then because people have all sorts of different backgrounds, I'm like, I'm not just going to stick with one specific idea and just hammer on with that and try and get results from it. Like a certain form of coaching or a certain form of psychotherapy approach or practice. So I was like, okay, I'll try and merge what is found, or the practices and the exercises that are found within cognitive behavioral therapy with dialectical therapy, Jungian psychology, with philosophy as well as being the main thing. So the Socratic process or Socratic questioning, which I think is basically the foundation of most exercises or processes with CBT, and kind of following through with the principle that you are to act as a mirror to others, but in a way that is to only bring about goodwill for that person, so that they are the person that are finding kind of revelation for themselves rather than you telling them what to do. And I kind of took it with that approach. And yeah, it was very good for a lot of people. And I think that approach is very useful. Like I think affirming something to the point of being an authority, even when there's resistance, is not going to help someone all the time. Like, it's not always going to be useful. And you might create this kind of conflict within the relationship of a therapist or a coach and the client. So, and this is where you could go down the Carl Rogers route, where it's, he coined the term unconditional positive regard with the other person, so that they can be able to open themselves up in different ways and see things about themselves in different ways that they wouldn't if someone was in conflict with them. So that also is kind of something I tried to integrate with it as well. So it's kind of like just really very holistic and very affirmative way. And then trying to just integrate as much of what I've worked on by the past 3-4 years with the channel and just conceptual ideas and all of these things, studying with the coaching. That's kind of how I try to approach it, at least.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It was a lot to think about there. But the key points, I think, or the main thing about what you said is, or I think at least what has brought you this, I would say, how to shut it down. It's always hard, to marketing something that is holistic. Yeah, but you nailed it really well there. The starting point is procrastination, and because that is what most people struggle with, and that is so true. And coaching is always, or most of the time, aiming at the next thing that will drive you to your goals.
Yeah.
And that can be very materialistic, or it can be within yourself internally, or, holistically. But when you say procrastination, people know what it's about. But I think also that because it's such a simple starting point, to know that you should do the next thing that is good for you and your environment and your surroundings. It's opening. I don't know if this has been your experience, but the people that come to you as a client, they first want to get rid of their procrastination and their patterns, but when they go along with the process with you, they notice how much that implied and how much insights to where their procrastination come from. And that's the key point when you say that let themselves realize things, not tell them, because you can tell anyone that, okay, I can solve your problem. Just do this, that. Some people that will work for, but in my experience, it's not working that well. And you're stealing their adventure as well when you do that.
Yeah.
Because they need, all the reflections, all the struggles to get to that realization to the next step is very important. How has that been in your experience with the clients? Is that
Yeah, it's tricky because, yeah, I mean, you think like try and think of an example. Yeah, be that it will not. I'd say the main problem that people are suffering with is, and why they would go to someone like a therapist or a coach, is because they are not accountable with someone else with regards to their vulnerabilities. And if they have that, then, and they trust that connection to be open about their vulnerability with maybe their insecurities in some regard, then that accountability that's built will allow them or help them kind of basically get to the next step of what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to realize about the start. So if that is built or if that is found within that relationship between a therapist or a coach, that's really good, because the trust needs to be there, and that trust will help the individual build themselves out further and further. And it's not really about telling someone what to do. It's more about them having someone on their side with complete positive regard and an understanding of their potential as a human being. I think that's really what it is. And that having that connection or that relationship massively helps someone build their self-esteem, or just even build their drive towards whatever that is. Because a lot of people are just, they're suffering in silence, or they don't have anyone else to really talk to with regards to what they feel insecure about. Because it's a difficult thing, it's a vulnerable thing to do, because there isn't maybe that trust with someone else, or maybe it's difficult to build that trust with someone else. So it's like, I think that's a big part of it. It's also developing a positive association to the benefits of suffering as well, through that accountable relationship with someone. And I think that's very important as well, because suffering isn't all bad. There are definitely very positive aspects of it when it's in, when there's an intention behind it towards trying to achieve something that's difficult to achieve. I think that's also a big part of it as well. Like, so for example, someone has social anxiety, and you kind of set up a framework for them to kind of confront that, and it's within a practice that's very, let's say, based within CBT. Let's say it's situational exposure, and you're kind of going around that approach. But you also need to have something behind that is not, I wouldn't say motivational, but like of a spiritual motivational aspect. There needs to be something that brings them into practicing that process, to confront the suffering so that they do move forward with their lives in a way that they want to. And I think that's really necessary as well. And, not all CBT offers that. Sometimes it's just secular therapists, and you go through this process, whatever it may be. And there might not be that kind of that aspect that fulfills the person that's the client. And there definitely needs to be that as well. I think there's probably like an innate calling to some sort of spiritual meaning with a lot of people.
Hello there. Just a quick interruption from the conversation here. I will just inform you that if you would like any coaching session with me, you can easily do that by just sending me a mail, and you will receive a free consultation. And if you put the episode name in the mail, you will get additional free hour of coaching. I also offer personal training and diet plans. Just hit me on the mail or send me a PM on Instagram or YouTube. Thank you very much. And now back to the conversation.
That aspect that fulfills the person that's the client, and there definitely needs to be that as well. I think there's probably like an innate calling to some sort of spiritual meaning with a lot of people.
Yeah, and that can be in different. That can be not expressed, but it can be, even if you're searching for meaning, and you're still a secular person, the purpose, how to say it, when you're approaching becoming whole, let's say, but you're a secular person, what you will often see is that secular persons that approach wholeness, let's say, their purpose will get higher and higher, and that when the purpose gets higher and higher, it contains concern for concern for their environment and other people. That's how I have seen it anyway. When I not just clients, but the people around me, they're secular, but when they're reaching, they are coming closer to meaning and so forth, and there is this concern for other people that grows, and the purpose is higher and higher, and the ego is deviating from the goal, So,
Yeah, does that like kind of for you? Does that show that there is a very kind of religious, spiritual aspect to the idea of having purpose?
oh yeah, yeah. Is a relation to the vertical, and it is really important to have that, because if you see like KBT, it's cognitive behavior therapy. Yeah. I think it's like 4 months. If you starting a process, you will be like not cured, but you will be off your own. The process is ending, but what you can see is that people need to do this. Like they come to that kind of therapy, and then 4 months later they come back, because it didn't last long. It wasn't this. The perspective is not for the long run, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I know people that kind of have used therapy as a way of, it's more of like a practice of a muscle, rather than it being like I achieve revelation and I never come back to it again kind of thing. So it's like, it's interesting. Like people use it for different means. And that obviously is great for whoever's using it. Yeah, there's definitely benefits to it. And it really depends on like how that individual really approaches things in life. If it works, then it works. Then if it doesn't, then maybe they're more called towards a more spiritual or maybe a more religious pursuit, and to be involved in that rather than to be going to a therapist or something. You never know.
Yeah, that a lot of you get from Jun as well. He encourage people to go back to their traditions and so forth.
Yeah.
So, and also at one point on the suffering that you said as well, it is important and it's not bad because we develop through it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you know it's where you encounter the metanoia, no pun intended, but the fragmentation of the psyche, and you have to reconcile and integrate some new part to build something new and better, and create a new aim. Hopefully, that aim will be something that will get the attention on the vertical.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like you're mentioning with some of the questions you asked me before is like fitness relating to Christianity or spirituality. It's it's the same process of like having having to build up a muscle or something. It's a good analogy where to be physically stronger, you have to break down something and then for it to kind of reconstruct itself into a self-improved version of what it was originally. It's very much like that. It's the same with having spiritual discipline, with recognizing your sins and then being able to repent for those and then continue on that journey with the Christian framework also, because it's like the massive aspect of Christianity is that God is all forgiving, so that you can in a sense become more spiritually disciplined, because you are going to fall all the time, constantly. And that's like a big aspect of Christianity, where it's like Christianity recognizes the sinful nature of human nature, and then it recognizes that from the get-go. And then it builds up towards these are the ideals in which you want to gravitate towards. These are, like with the Trinity, for example, or that being how God's nature is, and that's how you are to connect with God, or God connecting to you, or vice versa. So it's, I mean, even with like your body is a temple of God, or a temple of the Holy Spirit is housed within you, and that you're bought with a price. Because, you didn't choose to come into existence. As some anti-natalists, if you've heard that movement, would argue like, oh, I didn't choose to come into existence and therefore I shouldn't exist, or like existence is evil or something. But instead, like with the Christian framework, it's like, no, you use that as a way to like respect yourself and be like, I'm going to look after my body because God has created me. This whole narrative, So, yeah, like suffering is very, it's very beneficial.
Yeah. And as you said, I was going to get to that, how you relate to fitness and Christianity, and, how it connects to spirituality. And that, what I hear you saying is like my own approach, is essential, is cleaning up one's sewers. So if you merge this with Christianity, clean up your sewers so you can, the Orthodox concept of how we understand the heart and mind, the nous, clean the nous, the eye of the soul. And or you can see it like cleaning out the dirty sewers, so the Holy Spirit sees it fitting, or is willing to dwell in that temple.
Yeah.
Something like that. But how do you started to flesh it out a little bit, but how has your perspective on fitness changed, or have it changed anything since you come to Christianity? Because I can imagine that you also have gone the route of Gnosticism, maybe.
No, I'd say I wouldn't really tap into Gnosticism, but I would say, with fitness, it's like, I know when I first got into fitness, I was more about, well, this the problem with this kind of thing is that if you obsess over something that's to do with the material world or something that's of this world, right? You're going to fall into some form of snare that is going to be a sin, and then it's going to kind of take you off the path that you're spiritually supposed to be on. So fitness can definitely do that, I'd say. Like, if you're, well, you can see it kind of in the fitness culture with people that want to get really big, very big muscular, physiques and all this type of stuff. To the point where they're risking their own health to take drugs that are going to like basically cut their lifespan in half, which is, it's crazy. What is just that is kind of like a way in which I now see this kind of thing where if there isn't something underneath that spiritual acting as the foundation for this action, then there is the likelihood to kind of fall into this kind of way of thinking that is going to hinder oneself, So, if I'm working out, well, something like this, the main principle that I take with it is I'm working out because it's good for my health in general, not because I want to fulfill some sort of, let's say, a vanity project, to put it in a blunt way, because, the fitness culture very much works off of that. It's all about vanity, and because it's not about the spiritual process of looking after one's health, and that which is the important thing to do, so anytime you look into, fitness clothing or, how, especially within like, let's say both for men and women when it comes to the marketing of fitness, or gym clothing, or kind of supplements and all of this type of stuff. It's all a scam, and it's like it's not really good for you in particular, but it fulfills this kind of desire that you want to achieve with regards to how you look or how you are seen by others or something like this. So it's trying to overcome that thing that is originally maybe desired within this world and actually going towards what is good, which is that you are maintaining your physical health, you're maintaining your your neurochemical health, working out is going to massively decrease your chances of, developing something like Parkinson's disease in the future or something like this, because you're applying a lot of pressure to your neurochemical system and your neurological system with regards to stress and stuff. So it's like all these things are very good. And making that the main focus rather than these kind of like physical material outcomes of what you can achieve with fitness. Like that's how I kind of look at it now, as opposed to it being kind of the opposite before, really, for a while.
Yeah. Most of us start out of just want to have a good body and so forth, or shed some fat. That's often the starting point. But one point there that come to mind as well is, when you become one-sided in some aspects, it turns into its opposite, and that is what you can see with the fitness sphere. The man, he becomes manlier, he got more testosterone, but when it comes to the extreme, he becomes quite effeminate. And same with the women that train. They are quite feminine in the beginning, but then when they go to the extreme, they become manly. So it's very unbalanced, It's but fortunately, this is not the case for most of the people, That's on the extreme. But you can see though in the trends of what you mentioned about the clothing and everything. For the women, it's very more, it becomes it's very, the attention becomes on their physical appearance rather than their physical capacity. And so it's
Yes, it's about how can I be seen rather than be self-improved in these different ways. And it's like, even it's with every aspect of it when I'm thinking about it. I made a video all about this kind of thing. I was kind of like just applying the Christian perspective to just this kind of like hypertrophy, building loads of muscle marketing scheme that there is. It's like, it basically tries to make you someone who is greedy with food, eat loads of food, so that you can get bigger muscles. And, so that's like, it kind of covers all aspects of it. Like, you don't need to eat all this food. You don't need bigger muscles to like, I don't know, for whatever reason. And, it's good to be, physically fit and to, have a good physique, but don't go to the extreme. Like it's not healthy to be an extremist, so, I think that should always be looked at in detail with whatever it might be. But those things would be like, if it feels greed, if it feels vanity, if it feels a lot of these kind of things. So it's even in an unconscious way, because it's marketed in a certain way that makes you feel good about yourself. Because like, if it makes me feel good about myself, then it's not really a bad thing. But if we look at it from a Christian way, it's like, these things, you don't really need to do these things, but we've been told that we need to do them because we want to please other people. And a lot of psychological marketing is all about, how am I lacking something? And therefore they market it in a way where this fulfills the thing that you lack, therefore buy it. So that's always the marketing scheme of anything. It's also relevant with fitness. So it's kind of looking through these big problems as well. So, because if we don't look through these problems, or we don't see through them, they have the potential of making us feel insecure, or manufacturing a sense of insecurity within ourselves, because we're just gravitating towards these beliefs that we need to do this or that, when really we don't.
Yeah, they are creating things that they're creating things. How to say it? A need. They are creating a need that we don't have.
Yeah, we don't need the thing they're trying to make a need for. Yeah, it's like creating false idols or something like this. It's very similar.
Yeah, very similar. Yes. So, yeah, I saw you had one period that you posted some training videos and so forth, and not training videos, but when you were quite in well shape and so forth. And do you still maintain that, or are you?
Oh yeah, I try to work out as much as I can. Whenever I get
Great.
If I'm traveling something, or if I'm in a certain, whatever, I try to work out as much as possible. Yeah.
Great there. Perfect.
And, it's like definitely a discipline thing. It helps with discipline massively.
Yeah. And that pour out in everything in your life. Discipline, routines is so important. That's for me at least, when I coach people, that's what I start with is look at how are you sleeping at night? How do your sleeping routines look like? When do you go up in the morning? When do you go to sleep in the night? And do you get the sunlight in your eyes in the morning, and so forth? Those subtle things, they just create this good spiral of good things, and that's how it works also chemically. When you do something, when you manage just a simple thing like making your bed in the morning, okay, you're done with that. You get a little dopamine, and dopamine is a chemical that is connected to motivation. So every step towards this and creating this striving, is also true in the chemical sense that when you finish something that is hard, then you get this positive, not spiral, but how to say it? Leaning into the day. Maybe is a way to put it. So it's very important with routines and discipline and all that. It can really get the mind clearer. People when they start doing those small things, sometimes it just the path becomes more clear. Let's say. 1.5 hour went like that.
Yeah, that's very
really great to talk to you. I had a list of more questions and so forth. Maybe you, if you have the time,
we can still go for another 30 minutes if you want. It's pretty good, this conversation.
Yeah, how long you have?
We could just go to the end of this hour and then wrap it up there.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Why not?
If you like.
Yeah, go for it. Like it's a good conversation. Like.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
And so in all of this, how do you view God? How do you let's say if you compare it from maybe before you approached Christianity, how has that view changed?
I think before Christianity, I was like viewing it with anything that represents some form of kind of spiritual, say, non-physical power could be God. I could say it like something like that. So it could be like very polytheistic or very so let's say I could look at Greek mythology and I'd start thinking like, oh, like these different gods represent like different archetypes, therefore that could be God, or that is God, that is part of God, or whatever that is representing like God's will, and therefore that means this or that. So therefore there would be kind of maybe no morality involved. It could just be like, well, God's this kind of like sporadic entity that embodies these different archetypes maybe that like present themselves in the world in different ways. So it'd be kind of very like a fluid kind of thing. It maybe wouldn't be very specific or wouldn't be religious at all. It'd be like very non-religious, kind of new agey kind of thing.
More like psychologically,
yeah,
that approach.
I mean, there's probably something that would probably turn that, but I can't think of anything right now. Maybe I don't know, something maybe like spiritualism, or well, no, not that, but I don't know what would maybe turn that.
No, I don't know either.
Something like that.
Yeah, mysticism and yeah. Okay, so just before you go into how God is, how you view God today, but I touched on this a while ago here. For me as a Scandinavian, we are really close to our we're quite close to our heritage from the old pagan gods, the pantheon of Odin and Thor and Freya and so forth. And I have similar things because it's the Germanic culture. You have and they parallel to like the Greek gods and the Roman. Yeah. Have that ever caught your in a more, or is it like you said, not really sure, because it's when you tapping into those gods, it's more in the fantastic realm, it's more like stories and bit about that. I don't know really how to frame it, but just to be explicit, maybe. Did you ever think about if maybe these Greek gods were real, or in that really more materialistic sense, it becomes, in the mind, is the real or not? But because here in Scandinavia, you have this still actually. It's growing also. It's paganism, and for me at least, I was very curious about my heritage, and these old gods have been they have been around, so to say. But when you look into it, most of what is written is actually quite recent times written, and also by Christians, like the Poetic Edda, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. The Eddas, it's like the Bible for Asatru, Yeah. So, but with all of these religions, it's in the beginning, it's always how to say it, vocal tradition. No, not vocal. Mouth to mouth, not scripture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, it's kind of like handed down generation by generation.
Yeah, exactly. So, is that something you have been, touching on and thinking about before with these different gods, or did you view them more, as you said previously, as archetypes?
I would say it was, like this kind of psycho-spiritual interpretation where these are functions of our psychology coming into life and being expressed through mythology. But that really is not really it's more just a psychological explanation of mythology. Like it's not really spiritual really. It's more of just a explanation of something from a different conceptual lens.
Yeah.
From a different viewpoint. So I never really committed to any kind of belief system until Christianity. And then, before that, it was kind of just like just looking at all these things and just trying to understand what they were from that lens. And that was probably because of like Bukowski's influence and Eric Neumann's influence and, all of these kind of writers, or Messiah Iliade, if that's how I've said his name right, where he does comparative religion, where he compares religions to each other. Just trying to understand and find explanations. You have that with like Joseph Campbell. They're all very similar in that way. They don't really, and they don't commit to really, I don't think, any belief system. Specifically, they're kind of more just interpreters of things from a different lens that's more secular. So maybe their religion is psychology. Maybe that is their religion, But yeah, I still look at things in that way because it's useful. But in terms of like faith and belief and stuff like that, I don't really have any. I haven't really looked into them as like do I believe in this or have faith in this. So when it comes to for me and how I look at things, I always try and, even with Christianity, I always look at the, how would you say it? Apologistic approach. So like, that's what I've always been very interested in. That's kind of what gravitated me towards these types of things. Is like, if I'm going to have faith in something, I want to understand how it makes sense and that there's a logical framework to having faith in something, so I've been looking at apologists who are kind of defending the faith through logical processes that are, philosophically accurate, possibly, and seeing if that stands up to being accurate or telling the truth, and then me looking at that and being like, okay, this makes sense, or this doesn't make sense, or so I usually look at things first from that kind of framework, and then kind of this belief in the unseen or having faith in the unseen probably comes second. So I've had this different from some people. Some people just have complete faith in something, and then they don't have any sense of doubt, and then it's just completely from just themselves, and they don't have some sort of rational process to rationalize something, But for me, it's kind of both. I try to do both when I look at these things.
Yeah, it's same here actually, because the other one doesn't erase the other.
Right.
It's both, and it's different level of reality, different level of truth, higher truth and lower truth, and what when you come to the highest point, you will contain all the rest. It's different explanations. Psychology, as you said, it's like a religion. It's a modern type of religion. It's a substitute for religion.
Yeah, you could say. Yeah. You could say it's like a religion of the self, in a way, because it's trying to understand how the concept of the self or consciousness is. So if you can build a framework of consciousness and you pertain to that framework of consciousness, then you could make that into religion, because people were like, oh, this is how this works all the time, every time. This is how you're supposed to do this every time. So it's like, yeah, you could definitely build a religion out of it.
But, then again, it is still beneficial, and it contains a lot of truth, and it's a good way on the path, and so I feel like you have quite the same approach to it, that there is this tendency from many people that when you have settled with one thing, they just combat every other thing. They can't see the reconciliation of things, In some ways, same with Jung, there is a lot of seeds of truth, actual truth in him that you come a long way just with a figure like Jung, if you read him and you understand him and his concepts, because it's touching on truth. And but where it's easy to get distracted, or how to say it, arbitrary, is when you don't have the real framework of the actually moral ethics and so forth. That's where many people, I think, will get confused, somewhat fragmented and delusional. And same with something like dream analysis. It can lead to pre-list and confusion and so forth.
Yeah. It's like taking all the boxes apart from having an ethical framework that grounds those other boxes in a way. At the end of the ethical aspect is that is kind of the foundation that should be influencing all these other things, possibly, so that there's something that has a foundation, you know.
Yeah. It's really important that moral ethics and Jung also said himself that it takes a lot of moral to change oneself to the better, something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then again, he's from a Christian background. His father was a pastor, and that was what started his, this watered down form of Christianity. Started the process of, from disappointment, really. If you read his biography.
Yeah. It's also he's influenced by Nietzsche quite a bit. So it's to take how much did he believe that he himself also had to reconstruct something for the future generations, because he was like, yeah, God is dead and we've killed him or something like this, and then this proclamation of Nietzsche with the God is dead idea, and then maybe he saw that and he was like, it's healthy psychologically to go back to traditional systems, but maybe it's not adequate for the future. Maybe he was thinking something like that as well. Maybe that's why he didn't really stick to. I don't think he really understood certain aspects of Christianity completely, though. So he did, but I don't know. There's some things that are here and there that don't add up with stuff like on the Trinity and things like that. But
That's a hard one with Jung, actually. And I think you're right on the spot there. I tried to find also some accounts of him encountering Orthodoxy. I didn't find anything, but he was really fond of the Catholics. But that's one great point that I see there in the note I had. My question to you was, how do you understand Jung's quaternity and how do you understand Jung's quaternity and Jung's view of the Trinity, and how do you reconcile these?
Yeah, well, the thing which I disagree with him on is that I don't think he's taken into account what the Trinity is trying to describe as opposed to what he thinks it's describing. Like, I feel like with the quaternity structure that he has is trying to describe metaphysically reality as a whole, rather than the Trinity is describing God's nature metaphysically. And in Christianity, God's nature and reality as a whole, with whatever it is metaphysically, are not the same thing. So I feel like he's kind of maybe conflating it to be something that it isn't, because he's saying, why is not the aspect of evil included within the Trinity if it's to do with integrating all these aspects of oneself so that we become fully understandable of oneself. When, like the Trinity's not to do that, it's more to describe God's nature and how he kind of functions, or the consubstantial persons in which under one Godhead, how God functions through these kind of these, I wouldn't say forms, but persons. You don't want to be misunderstanding the Trinity or anything like this. But so when I was thinking of that, I was like, okay. So Jung's kind of coming from an approach of, this is how reality should be as a whole. This is how we should look at it metaphysically. But I don't think Christianity is in conflict with what he's kind of saying either, because it's like I was saying earlier, Christianity is very understanding of evil and sin and the fallen nature of man and original sin. It's great from the beginning, So it's not that Christianity disregards, the human nature and the fallen aspects of human nature. It's just saying that, look, we know that we're fallen, and these are the things we have to guide ourselves towards. We obviously don't want to guide ourselves towards something evil. And we want to, whatever, integrate that, whatever it is, because it already is part of us. Like we have original sin and all of this. So there's already this proclivity to commit sin and all of that type of thing. So I don't really know what he's trying to get at. Maybe he's trying to take the Trinity and apply it in a non-religious way and kind of just describe all of these things outside of religion, which would make sense for him because he's kind of creating a new age movement with his stuff anyway, because a lot of people who follow him kind of do have that kind of new age tendency to believe in everything and nothing at the same time.
Yeah. You brought up a lot of good points there. Thank you for that. Because you made a distinction between the nature of God, how God is, and of how Jung perceives how the world works. As a quaternity. Was that how you meant?
He's seeing it as how the world works rather than how God works.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think is really close actually, and the problem of the shadow, just because we don't include it in God's nature, or God is the components of God, let's say, doesn't mean that we don't actually get, because we get insights from our sins. And how we integrate it is like we put certain passions in the right place in our hierarchy, let's say, of seeking wholeness. Something like that. Does that resonate, or do you have any thoughts on that? Could that be one way to reconcile it?
Yeah, so I see sin. Yeah, it brings. That's difficult actually, because does sin in of itself bring awareness? I don't know. I don't really know, because you can keep sinning and committing wrong and not change. So that is possible. That's been it's very consistent. So I don't know. That see the way is like the Trinity as being specifically God's nature, how God's natures function, and then Christianity recognizes sin as being the fallen nature of man through the doctrine of original sin, and then and that we can glean insight into how we can improve ourselves by being aware of sin and what sin actually is. So if we're aware of it and we kind of humble ourselves in that process, then the humility allows us to make improvements upon ourselves in the sense of sin and not sinning. And that has to probably come through humility. Like we probably can't achieve that without being humble. And I think even the Catholics, the Orthodox probably say that pride is the greatest sin of all sin, because it blocks off everything else.
It's the mother of all sins.
Yeah. That's
exactly.
a big problem there, I think. Yeah.
Were humility a big key for you?
Yeah, I'd say humility is kind of the gateway to receiving.
How did that? How did the humility taste for you in the beginning? If you know what I mean. How did it? Was there some resistance to it?
Yeah, like with massive resistance.
Yeah.
And then there'll be like resistance, because it has to be resistance with this part. So there will have to be resistance. So it's like even even if someone is resisting against these certain things, like they say Christianity, or they're like very resistant to Christianity, maybe understanding that resistance has to be there. You have to work through that resistance, because this deprived is taking up maybe a lot of our actions already. Therefore, we have to confront that resistance. So we should see resistance as something that's already going to be there, and we have to work through that.
Yeah, exactly. That's one way to get to the next step. Actually, look at where are you what and where do you have your resistances in every part of life, actually. But humility, it's one key. But in the beginning, it's quite hard, because, and also if you have this more warrior mind, and so forth, it looked like weakness. But it's really not. It's completely different. That weakness is opposite.
Yeah, that's probably the descriptive difference with the Christian framework, where it's meekness rather than weakness. And someone who's would see it as weakness would see it as being weak, but then it's to be meek instead of weak, which is to, understand that you're always a student of life or something like this, and you can always, you are under the authority of God, and that you always will be learning something.
Yeah. So this humility, what we can take this away from this discussion, that maybe for someone that think that humility is weakness, should try it out. Try to be humble. See where it leads you.
Yeah.
So
especially with that was kind of the first big question with Christianity that I asked myself, is like, what is wrong with Jesus Christ? Like, what is wrong with him? There is nothing wrong with him, from what I can see. It's like, well, I thought there was something wrong, but really I didn't really look at it in a way that was humble enough for me to view it properly, because I was looking into all these other things, right? So it needs to be always there to ask these questions, and maybe like the correct way.
Yeah. There's really no faults of Jesus, no, and his reconciling everything, actually, and balances everything, and he not the communion, but the how to say it in English, communion of the opposites, coming together with the opposites.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Complementary symbolism. Yeah.
So, Spencer, I thank you really much for the time here, and this 2 hours just flew by.
Yeah,
and really interesting to talk to you, and it was. I have been wanting to talk to you for a long time, actually. So this was really, really great. And tell us a little about where we can find you. And I will also put everything in the description in this YouTube and Spotify and so forth. So, but where can people find it? Because I really recommend people to contact you if they need coaching. It seems to be just on the spot.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I love this conversation. It was really very cool. And so if people want to find me online, it'll be on Thoughts on Thinking, the YouTube channel, which is what it's called. It's the same for Instagram. And through those two channels, you can find everything with what else I do. So I have like a shadow work course, which blends Jungian psychology and Christianity together, so that they complement each other. And I do the coaching as well, and you can find that all on those channels. So yeah.
Great. And one last thing I want to ask you, actually, just a quick one. It surprised me that I couldn't find you anywhere on any podcast. That surprised me quite. Is it because you don't have the interest to do the podcast that much, or?
Yeah, I mean, I have been requested to do a few. I'd say like it was a while ago though. But I just never really went for them really. I might do it like now. I think more people ask for me to do that. I just never really wasn't really too bothered. I mean, I noticed as well with some individuals where they wanted me to do debates, and I wasn't really up for debating because I wasn't really very solid on any opinions, particularly. So I was like, I don't want to debate you. Yeah, so I wasn't really bothered with that. But if it came around again, I might do some debates maybe, but I'm not really too interested.
Yeah. Polemics is a strange sphere, It fits for certain people, in the Jay Dyer and those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, it's polemics. It's, yeah.
It's tricky. It's tricky at that. Like, you're literally arguing the world.
But of course, it has its place. I look at debates on and off, because trying to learn the different perspectives is very fruitful in that way. So, yeah. But I would encourage you to go on podcasts because I think people want to hear your thoughts on things, thoughts on thinking, and so forth.
Yeah.
So yeah.
If I get any more, I'll definitely jump on.
Yeah, great. Or maybe start your own podcast. I would listen to it. Yeah, I think you should do that, really. But the biggest step is always, as you're quite familiar with this, the editing and so forth. It's very time consuming. So, but hey, you're quite experienced in that now. You have had this channel for quite some while, so should be easy for you, right? So
yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of having a good setup and making sure you do it correctly.
Yeah, the content is what is most important. So, and that will be great content to have you as a podcast host and different guests. I think you would easily get on quite interesting people. So
yeah, definitely got to think about that. Yeah, it'd be very cool.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Spencer. And just see if you can just stay after when I end this recording.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, perfect. So
thank you, man.
Thank you very much, Spencer, and thank you for joining us.
Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So there's the end of episode 4. I hope you got some insights to where to start to look at yourself, and maybe you can become less prone to procrastinate. Why not send Spencer a mail, and maybe he can book a coaching session with you. All the information to his channels and so forth is in the description of this video. Next time we will be joined by the Posh Redneck. Until then, take care. Bye. Don't forget to follow this podcast here on Spotify and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. And why not go in and share it and like my content and episodes. So all the episodes is in one list, so it's easy to find the particular episodes. Don't forget to check out my Instagram account, Matthias Lidborn, and Matthias Lidborn SWE. The SWE is my Swedish Instagram account. Anyway, if you want to book a coaching session with me, you can always mail me or go into my website. All the information is in the description in this episode, in YouTube, and also here on Spotify. So, I hope you tune in to the next episode. Thank you very much.